Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. In the last part we finished the Fire Temple and learned that our good old friend Darunia was in fact the Sage of Fire. You know, after following up on Saria being the Forest Sage, I'm noticing a trend where the main important NPC of an area turns out to be the Sage. I'm sure that's just a coincidence though. With that though, it's time for us to continue on here in Death Mountain Crater. While we have more or less completed everything in the area, there are a couple of things we can now access now that we have the Megaton Hammer that we couldn't access before. For instance, there's this scrub room I forget exists a lot of the time that sells ammo, and that's about it. The main thing we can grab is that there's now 2 Skulltulas and one other thing over here on the right that we couldn't without the Megaton Hammer, without doing some insane clipping. Including another Great Fairies Fountain. There's just 2 in Death Mountain, I guess. Haven't seen one of these in a while, though. Just do the usual and play Zelda's Lullaby. Don't mess up like I did there. This is probably one of the most important ones in the game to get overall, though. That's not required by plot. Welcome, Link. I'm the Great Fairy of Wisdom. I'm going to enhance your magic power. Receive it now. Your magic meter is enhanced. Your magic power has been enhanced. Now you have twice as much magic power. When battle has made you wary, please come back to see me. As she said, our green bar underneath our health has now doubled in size. I take it was easier to demonstrate that than just to put the 1/2 marker over it like they did in A Link to the Past. Because that was a clumsy way of showing that now things cost half as much. They just made the bar bigger instead. Just because of the amount of magic-oriented items we're going to be start using after the next dungeon in particular, it's very handy to get this now. Additionally, it'll also come in handy during the mini-boss in the next dungeon, as one of the best ways to take that fight out is to just spam Din's Fire. More on that. I'm actually not sure how many parts from now that is. I need it to be nighttime, I believe, for these next couple of Skulltulas, as while they're not in direct sunlight, I think you still need it to be nighttime. First off, right down here, you can find a rock that we need to destroy, as beneath it is the next gold Skulltula. You know, there's something really satisfying about killing a giant spider with a giant hammer. The most I've ever done to a spider, you know I generally don't like killing spiders, is probably a stool. I've gone overkill on them in the past. I don't mind spiders when they're out in the world, but if there's one right next to me in the bathroom, that thing is not living longer. If it's in the house generally, though, I'll just pick it up on a napkin and, like, put it on the deck or something like that. There's the final gold Skulltula for Death Mountain, by the way. And now it's time for us to head towards Zora's River, as the first 3 dungeons are all oriented around places we have been in the past. Technically, first 4, but less so on the 4th one for reasons we'll see later on. And where the magic bean salesman once was, there is now a magic bean plant, because I planted a magic bean next to him. Have I said magic bean enough in the past 5 seconds? I could say it more. No, I won't do that. Now, this is not only a faster way to get through this area, as it'll take you almost to the end of this wide open area, but there's also 2 grottos and a gold Skulltula here for us. One of these grottos is just a standard one. I think it has like 5 rupees in a chest inside of it. I forget. In fact, I think it's this one. Whereas the other one is a fairy's fountain. I am cutting out the fairy's fountain after I fall into it, though, as, well, I think I grab a fairy in there. It's nothing we haven't seen before since the Sacred Forest Meadow. I want to say I also put a fairy in a bottle while in there, but I'm going to tell you right now, if you have anything in any of your 4 bottles, empty them. At least to the point where you have 3 empty ones. If you have like a potion in one, keep that around. You never know, you might need it, but you're going to want at least 3 empty bottles for what's coming up, just to save you on some backtracking. Before we get to Zora's domain, though, there is one last gold Skulltula along the way here, and it's one I always have trouble spotting for some reason. It's above us, but not right now for some reason, even though it's day-night time. It's on the wall next to this fence, but I always have a hard time finding it for some reason. And hitting it's a bit of another task, as you need to be in a very specific place to not only hit it, but to grab the token. As the hook shot, it can do a lot of things. Its range is not the best. I want to say it can maybe go 3 or 4 link heights away from you, but that's about it. It's relatively short range. With that, though, let's just play the Zelda's Lullaby again and get into Zora's domain. And is it snowing? I like the snow. It's the Massachusetts in me speaking, but I like the snow. Yeah, it's a pain in the ass when you're driving, but I don't care. It's relaxing. It has a nice aesthetic to it, especially a bright city in the snowlight, in the snowfall at night. Like, top 3 visual aesthetics to me. I love the mufflingness of the sound that happens when it's like that. I do want to make it night, though, as Zora's domain now holds a Skulltula for us. This is not what Zora's domain was like as a child. What the hell is happening? It was snowing for a reason. Zora's domain is now completely frozen. And most of its citizens are frozen beneath the ice. Those who aren't are frozen in red ice, which we can't really do anything about right now. I think even the shopkeeper is frozen in red ice, which we'll get to what we can do with that. Technically this part, more so next part. But I made it night because there's now a gold Skulltula right near where the diving game was as Child Link. This is one of the ones I often forget is here for some reason, despite it being the only one in Zora's domain. I don't know why. I'm just kind of an idiot. Sometimes, selectively. There's only one thing we can really do at this point, though, and that's continue on to Zora's Fountain, which is similarly frozen, though there is still some unfrozen water around here. I'm not sure how the non-flowing water isn't frozen. Oh, actually, no, it is flowing. Because I think, technically speaking, the waterfall above Zora's domain goes out over there. Where Jabu-Jabu once was, there's now a bunch of ice platforms that have ice physics on them, and the ice physics in this game are a little bit wonky. Particularly when it comes to jumping off, as you just saw there. That is not how momentum works. I should be in the water right now. Thankfully, the cold water doesn't damage you. It's just cold water. There is a piece of heart up here, though, which that's helpful. I'll take one of those whenever I can. The thing we want to do, though, is head north. As you see, there's a giant crack in the wall there that I think you could even see as Child Link. We just couldn't enter it. But now that there's ice platforms here, we very easily can. Welcome to the Ice Cavern, our first mini-dungeon. Starting out from this point in the game, moving forward, there's going to be technically 4 of these mini-dungeons that have an important item for us that we need to use in the next dungeon, either to access it or to do most of the puzzles within it. Technically speaking, this is a much more required dungeon, though, than the other one. Ice physics are abound in here, as are ice traps. The first ones of those we're going to see in the game. If Link gets frozen, you take damage. I think procedurally, the longer you hit, the more damage you take. And you need to mash the buttons like nothing else to get out of it. There's also going to be a lot of blade traps with ice physics, which doesn't exactly work right. This dungeon isn't too hard. You can honestly do this as soon as you start the Adult Link section. Which it goes into the thing I brought up around the time we were heading towards the Forest Temple, where you can do the dungeons in largely whatever order you want in this portion. The only things you need are the hook shot to do basically every dungeon. And to do anything in the Fire Temple or the next temple onward, you do need the bow and arrow. But beyond that, as long as you get the item from this dungeon as well, you can do things in largely any order. You're going to need Epona for some of them, but yeah. I have done a playthrough where I just do the Forest Temple, then do the 3rd temple, the 2nd temple, then the 5th temple, and the 4th temple. The Ice Cavern does have gold Skulltulas, though. About 2 or 3, I think? I can't remember off the top of my head. But we are being very much railroaded, as there's not much of a path we can take right now. Din's Fire can come in helpful in here, as it can help with some of the Ice-type enemies, particularly these weird, I think they're called Freezards. But I'm just going to walk past them, as the ice physics are annoying enough. Although I've always liked the ice texture for some reason in this game. It just looks like crunchy chocolate to me, particularly in the last room, not so much here. In this room, though, we do get a new enemy, Ice Keese. They're Fire Keese, but blue. They're both more and less annoying than Fire Keese, though, as while Ice Keese can freeze you, meaning you have to mash the buttons, they can't actively destroy any of your equipment in this 2 areas of the game you encounter them in, maybe. So they kind of just balance out. This blue fire, it doesn't seem natural. Maybe you can use it for something? Indeed, this is why I recommend you empty out your bottles, whereas I have 3 full, which means I need to do some serious emptying off screen eventually. We can contain the blue fire in bottles, hence why it's on this little pedestal. You can also buy some of this in the potion shop back in Kakariko. You put blue fire into a bottle. This is a cool flame you can use with the C buttons. And you're going to want to fill as many of your bottles with this stuff as you can, really. Now, do the math. We have red ice. We have a blue cold fire. Cold fire melt, as I'm assuming, hot ice? Yes. Wherever you've seen red ice in the game, and by that I mean in the past, like, 15 minutes, you can use blue fire to completely melt it. And in this case, we have a big chest that contains a mini dungeon map. 2 mini dungeons in this game have dungeon maps. The other 2 do not, which is why these are considered, I guess, more important. It's a very small dungeon. It's only like 7, 8 rooms. But one thing you're going to want to do is always make sure you have at least 2 to 4 bottles of blue fire on you at a time. You're also going to want to leave with at least 1 bottle of blue fire when you're done here. I could, I suppose, recommend leaving with even 2, because obviously we saw King Zora in it, but so is the shopkeeper. But the shopkeeper you never really need to use in Zora's domain as an adult. The bazaar and potion shop in Kakariko have more than you'll ever need for anything. But anywhere you see red ice, use some blue fire and your new path will open. There are some pathways you don't need to take if you're here just for the required stuff, especially if you already have 50 Skulltulas. But the compass, as well as some gold Skulltulas, are blocked behind some red ice optional pathways. And, well, getting everything in 100% is kind of an important caveat. So I need to do some out-of-the-way backtracking. And even then, for this pathway, you want to get it anyway, because there's a piece of heart in here, if I'm recalling correctly. Yeah, right there. I've always found it a bit odd that mini-dungeons in this game can have pieces of heart. I don't know why. Mind you, pieces of heart just became more prevalent in dungeons moving forward, as I think, starting from the next game, technically in Zelda chronologically, which I want to say was like the Oracle games, or was it Majora? Heart pieces started appearing in dungeons. I think it started off with like 1 per, but sometimes you got even 2 per, I want to say. All I know is that I'm at the point with some Zelda games where I can have more hearts by the end of the first dungeon than you're really meant to. I know I can leave the first dungeon in Minish Cap in particular with 6 hearts, which, not how that's supposed to work. I can enter with 5. Which might be the only time I can think I can do that in a Zelda game that doesn't start you with more than 5. Here's the compass. It doesn't do much here. I have to wonder if, at one point, the actual dungeon we're going to do for this portion of the game was supposed to have more of an ice physics mentality, which is why this ice dungeon is here to introduce you to the mechanics. Or had maybe blue fire more prevalently featured? I'm not sure. There's a lot in Ocarina of Time where, looking back on it, it's either concepts they didn't fully explore that they felt like they were just kind of introduced to vanish. And I can't help but wonder if that's just due to time constraints, space constraints, or just figuring it wasn't as interesting as the other ideas they had planned. Speaking of uninteresting ideas, we have a block pushing puzzle. This is an ice block pushing puzzle though, so as you might figure, when you push the block, it slides until it hits something. And this is also technically our second introduction to silver rupees. I didn't talk about these a few minutes ago when they first showed up, but there are 5 silver rupees in each silver rupee room. You need to collect all 5 for the way forward to open. Get used to seeing these. As I think, starting from at least the dungeon after next, they're in every area, really. Or maybe even before that. Are they prevalent in the next dungeon? I can't quite recall off the top of my head. There might be one instance of them in the next dungeon. It's weird. I can't remember much about the next dungeon unless I'm actively playing it. Despite one of my friends fearing I would forget all about that dungeon's layout. No, I didn't. Andrew, I got through it relatively safe. You'll see. Calling out my specific friends, yes, but it's what I do. Also, of course, make sure you have some blue fire so you can take care of the red ice that's containing this 1 silver rupee. I do recommend, with the blue fire in this room, by the way, stocking up with at least 3 blue fire. As it's the last blue fire in the dungeon. We're already really close to the end of it. This place is tiny. Shorter than, I think, every Child Link dungeon, which is kind of an accomplishment. Given Deku Tree, if you skip all the texts and just look at all the dungeon stuff, is not much bigger than this place. You might notice, though, there are 3 20 rupee groups floating in the sky there. When you get close to this next silver rupee, or up there with the blue fire even, if you play the Song of Time, as you might notice, Navi's turning green, a Song of Time block will appear. I'm not doing it because I don't need money. I'm full. Oh shit, that's a pit. I should note, what really sucks about falling into a pit in this room in particular, I'm about to stock up on a lot of blue fire, by the way, is that you go all the way back to the start of the dungeon. So I had to backtrack all the way here, which doesn't take too long because it's such a small place, but it's still really tedious. And also, just to speed things along, I'm going to speed up pushing this block to the point where I can get to the ledge. Doesn't take too long, but still. Also, this dungeon music sounds kind of creepy when sped up. I don't know why. With that, time for, I guess we're getting close to the boss fight, quote-unquote, of this dungeon. We do have one last bit of red ice in our way, though. This is why you're going to want at least 2 or 3 for the actual ending of this dungeon. But you can just backtrack back. I think you'll have to push the block again, but it's not that bad. Technically speaking, you might want to get more if you want to unfreeze all the red ice here, but there's nothing important in these pots. I think it's just some magic, some hearts, maybe even an arrow or 2. But yeah, this place does have a mini-boss of sorts. It's a white Wolfos. It's a Wolfos with slightly more HP and it's white. Actually, maybe it doesn't even have more HP because that went down really easily. Just spin attack and it will die. Time for our actual reason we're here in the Ice Cavern, though. This particular big chest contains a piece of equipment we're going to need in the next dungeon. A lot in the next dungeon, even. We got the iron boots. So heavy we can't run, so heavy we can't float. What? Oh, hi, Cheek. Snuck up on me again. Don't make this a habit, you hear? We meet again, Link. If you came here to meet the Zoras, you wasted your time. This is all there is. With one exception, the Zoras are now sealed under this thick ice sheet. I managed to rescue the Zora princess from under the ice, but she left to head for the water temple. This ice is created by an evil curse. The monster in the water temple is the source of the curse. Unless you shut off the source, this ice will never melt. If you have courage enough to confront the danger and save the Zoras, I will teach you the melody that leads to the temple. Time passes, people move. Like a river's flow, it never ends. A childish mind will turn to noble ambition. Young love will become deep affection. The clear water surface reflects growth. Now listen to the serenade of water to reflect upon yourself. You have learned the Serenade of Water. Link, I'll see you again. Yeah, I'm noticing you tend to pop up. Oh, hey, stop doing that. Seriously, my eyes. I noticed you tend to pop up right when I need you to. The Serenade of Water, by the way, warps you directly to the top of the big island out in the middle of Lake Hylia. With that, though, the iron boots are an equipment piece, meaning you need to go to the equipment subscreen to equip them, but when you use them, you sink in water. However, a caveat to this is that there's also a timer for drowning like there is for dying in the heat. I believe they're based off the same value, though it's just based off how many hearts you have. With that, though, and us gaining the iron boots, I'm going to need to end this off here with me leaving the Ice Cavern. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 23... we're going to, I believe, be doing some side stuff around Hyrule before starting off the trek towards the next temple. See you guys then.